Okay, we're now recording again. Okay, so step three. Step three is where we have the relative worth finished, and now we create what's called a pay grade. Now, obviously, in a small company, if you have a company with like 5 employees, we're not going to really use pay grades. Everybody just gets a salary. But in any sort of larger company, we have these groups of jobs. So if you are the director or the manager of marketing versus the manager of advertising versus the manager of HR, you're probably all in one pay grade, because a pay grade is a range of points. So if a job is out of 100 points in this company, you actually could have, let's say it's a really big organization, you might have a lawyer, a doctor, a director, a manager, a CEO. You might have a whole different group of jobs that are all in one range of points. Let's say that a pay grade, if the maximum is 100 points, let's say you have a grade that's 80 to 100. Now that can include lots of totally different jobs. It could include the marketing manager and a lawyer, even though what they do is very different. But they're both, level 80 or 85. And so they would both be in this grade. Obviously, in order to use pay grades, we need to have a quantitative number associated with each job. Now, once we have these pay grades, so these are groups of jobs that have a similar number of points. And as we said before, we get the points from this method of using compensable factors. So we use these compensable factors, we separate these, and remember, we started this by talking about the Hay Guide chart. This was an example of compensable factors. These are all compensable factors. Jody, again, what do we mean by compensable factors?
So like we measure by their skills, effort, and responsibility, knowledge.
Okay, those are examples of compensable factors. That's true. But what's the sort of definition of compensable factors?
The equal pay?
Well, I would say the definition is these are the factors we use to decide how much to pay people. These are the factors we use to decide how much to pay people. We use skills, we use responsibility, we use work condition, we use education. But here are other ones that we didn't say before. We looked at this already, but now you probably understand a little better what we mean by compensable factors. Freedom is a factor. Magnitude is a factor. Accountability is a factor. Tell me something about these factors, Chandra. Why is magnitude or impact a compensable factor?
Not sure.
Okay, what do you think, Harry?
Maybe magnitude is how big the job is. I don't know what that would mean, but like, yeah, the size of the job.
So would somebody who has a bigger project to do maybe get paid more?
Yeah.
Let's say that we work in a language school, and my job is that I teach English to kindergarten children. Chandra's job is that she is developing our adult education program. So I teach kindergarten children in a class. Chandra is developing a program for all of China to teach adults online. The magnitude, the size of her project is so much larger than the size of my project. That's a factor as to why she gets paid more money. Now, even if I have a PhD in education and I'm the best kindergarten teacher they've ever had, still, and Chandra only has a BA, it doesn't matter because the magnitude of her project. she's in some ways worth more money to this organization. Impact also, how much you impact the organization or the customers. How much of a challenge is there? Is this a very thinking environment? This is what we talked about with education. And then all these different skills, knowledge, technical things. So there's lots and lots of compensable factors. And now we can come back to look at these. We use points so that we get an overall quantitative rank for these jobs. And then we put these jobs into groups. So while Chandra is involved with the adult education program, and maybe out of 100 points for her compensable factors, she gets a 75. And Jonathan is our director of advertising. Totally different job, but he also gets a 75 for different reasons. But they both have a 75. They will both be in the same range, the same pay grade, because they're both, 75 to 100. So they're both in the same pay grade. Now, once we have a pay grade, we have the jobs grouped together by numbers, then we use a wage curve. In this is a visualization. This is where we actually make a chart or a diagram. Everything up to now has been just writing text and numbers, but now we actually create a diagram. And the wage curve will look something like this. And I'll come back to the definition in a second. But this is what a wage curve would probably look like. So here we have the wage in dollars, and here we have the job grade based on the point system. So the maximum points you could have at our company is 300. If you have 300 points, you get $10 an hour, for example. If you have 100 points, you get approximately, about $6 an hour if you have 100 points. If you have 200 points, you get approximately $7.50 an hour. But what we use is a pay grade, right? So with this wage curve, it's not like if you have 100 points, you only earn this. And if you have 105 points, you earn 10 cents more. And if you have 110 points, you earn 20 cents more. Instead, we have a range. And the range here goes from about $5 to about $7, right? And this right here, this square is a grade. So this is, let's say, grade 1. Here's grade 2. If you're in grade 2, it's getting a little messy. If you're in grade, here's grade 1, here's grade 2, here's grade 3, grade 4, 5 and 6. If you're in grade 2, you might start this job at around, here, let's say 525. And you stay in grade 2 until you're earning, 625. And when you begin to earn this, so you can see there's an overlap, right? There's an overlap between the two grades where you could be earning more money in grade 2 than someone who just started grade 3. And there's a very specific reason for this overlap. So let's say that right now we have some new workers in our company, these brand new teachers. We have Christine and Anais are our brand new teachers. They just finished university and this is their first job. So they're going to start maybe at a lower level. So they're going to start at, the beginning of grade 3. They start at $6 an hour. Now, Anais has worked very, very hard, and she's gotten up to $7 an hour. And so has Christine. Now, we do not want to move either of them into grade 4. We want to keep them in grade 3, but we still want to give Anais a benefit. So what benefit can we give her? Well, we can move Anais into grade 4, but keep her salary the same. So what we're giving her is a benefit without changing her salary. Being moved, so why is this an important benefit? Because if Anais leaves our company and goes to another company, so these wage curves are used in almost all companies. And if Anais leaves our company and goes to Disney English, she can tell them, I was in pay grade 4. Where Christine could only say, I was in pay grade 3, even though they were earning the same money. So it's the same reason that you want a job title. If you leave my company with the title manager, the next job you're looking for begins with that title. People don't go down, they only go up usually. So we want to have a wage title. And these pay grades are your title. You might be an assistant manager, but you might be at grade 6. You might be a manager, but you might be at grade 5. So these grades are part of your sort of official title and can be very useful for that purpose. Okay, so these are called wage curves, going back to this. These are wage curves. They show the average pay rate. It shows the relationship between the value of the job and the average pay for the job at this grade. So again, we're looking at the payment for the job against the grade or points. So here in this, how many points for each grade? Rodrigo, looking at this chart, how many points for each grade?
50.
Correct. Right? So grade 1 is from 0 to 50 points. Grade 2 is from 50 to 100 points. Grade 3 is 100 to 150 points. So every 50 points that you get for your compensable factors equals 1 grade. And these grades are just like your job title. You can go up in grades as you go up in compensable factors. Now, again, this is important because if Rodrigo comes to my HR office and says, David, I'm only in grade 3. How do I get to grade 5? I can show him this chart and say, well, look, here's the numbers. Right now, your number is 120. That's why you're in grade 3. To get to grade 5, you need to go up to 220. Here are your compensable factors. Here are your points. Here's the training you need to do. Here are the skills you need to learn. Maybe you need to go back to school and get a degree. Here are the things you need to learn in order to get the points up. So part of the reason that we use all of these things, and there's one more thing that we use, is what's called a rate range. I'll come back to that chart in a second. A rate range is instead of, for each grade, instead of just having one rate, like in this chart, where you have these rates that go up and you have a square for each job grade, you might, and this is for as the company gets bigger, you might have something that looks like this. This is what the government uses. So let's understand this kind of table that the government uses, because it's everything we just talked about. So we start with grades, right? Grade number 1 is the lowest. And each grade, instead of having, like back here, instead of just having a line that goes up, what we call a wage curve that has a maximum and a minimum, instead of this, we would have steps. So imagine if we took this 0 to 50 and separated that into 5 steps and made it very clear that there is grade 1, step 1, grade 1, step 2, grade 1, step 3, grade 1, step 4, grade 1, step 5, and then grade 2. And that's what the governments usually do because they're such big employers. In fact, the American government uses 10 steps. So you can start with step 1, your lowest salary. You can get up to step 10. Now look at this important difference. Which is more money? The step 10, grade 1, or step 3? Step 10, grade 1, or grade 3, step 1. Constance, you there?
Yes.
So why is grade 3, step 1, more than grade 1, step 10? I mean, you see, it's such a big difference. Grade 2, like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, they're all less than grade 1, step 10. How is that possible?
Because they don't have like the same type of work.
Maybe. I think that's partially true. Any other thoughts as to why this might be true? That a higher grade still doesn't get more money?
Because like when you work a long time for a company, you're a bit more valuable to them. So like, for example, if you work 14 years, say for step 1, you're going to be a bit more valuable than the employee who works for, a year, who is on step 3.
So, and that's true too. So let's take that logic that was Misha, right? That Misha just said. Let's say that, Chloe, you are a salesperson for our English teaching company, and you start at grade 1, and your job responsibilities never change. You've worked for us for 10 years, but your job responsibilities never change. You never got more training. You never got a master's degree. You just always did the same job. Your grade may not go up, but your salary still should go up. Because every year you work for us, you gain experience and seniority. And so your salary can go all the way up to higher than, let's say Christine comes into our advertising department. She has a master's in advertising, but she's brand new. Now, if Christine works for us for 10 years, who's worth more to the company? Christine, who's advertising our product to all of China, or Chloe, who's selling our product in one small town in Ningbo? Well, maybe Christine she has more relative worth. So if Christine works for 10 years and Chloe works for 10 years, we expect Christine to earn more. But right now at the beginning, Christine should earn less than Chloe, because Chloe's been here 10 years and Christine is brand new. And it would not really be fair to Chloe if Christine started on day 1 with a higher salary. So having so many steps does allow for, as I said, the grade is valuable, because if Christine works for us and she does get more training, maybe she goes up to grade 4, and then she gets another certificate and goes back to school, she goes up to grade 5. Now, if Christine moves to another company, she will start at the new company at grade 5. People almost never go down, they only go up. So you see, this is a salary table that goes all the way from $22,000 to $155,000. It's a very wide range for government jobs, but it takes about 20 years. That's the expectation. 20 to 25 years to start from about grade 3 and go up to grade 14. Most people do not get to grade 15. Most people do not start at grade 1 and 2. Grade 1 and 2 is for non-exempt jobs, like people who are moving packages, working in the mailroom, cleaning the buildings. Those people are never going to go up to grade 14, because once you get above grade 10, education is absolutely required, higher levels of education. Going back to the chart we had skipped over, this is more of a wage curve, right? So for the wage curve, we have all these different jobs. From 0 to 100, we separate, into 50. Each point value is 50 points, each pay grade. And different jobs have different points, and then we draw a line that is as close to as many points as possible. And this becomes our wage curve. So this is, it's a little bit of the wrong word, because it's not a curve, it's a line. But the point is, we have grades, the line, which we call wage curve, and then ranges, okay? So the grade is putting jobs together based on the number. The curve is actually this line that we use, this straight line, and then the ranges is the steps. I don't know if that's clear to you. It's clear to me. What do you think, Christine? Is that clear?
Yeah, a little. Is this going to be on the exam, like this kind of table?
Kind of. This exact table will not be on the exam, but the concept of how do you use the job analysis, so you do the external equity salary survey, then relative worth, job grades, rate, wage curves, rate ranges, yes.
Okay.
So I do want to make sure that if you're confused right now, we talk about it. We'll go over it again in the review. Just want to make sure. Okay, so now what about managers? How do we pay or look at managers and professional jobs? You know, and that's a little bit different. You know, what determines like an executive pay? That's a little bit different than looking at a variety of jobs like non-exempt workers or teachers or things like that. Because management jobs, they have much more non-quantifiable factors. When you're talking about most jobs, you can talk about skills, responsibility, experience, working conditions. But when you're talking about executives, you're talking about things like problem solving. How do we measure which job requires more problem solving, the director of HR or the marketing manager? That's a very hard thing to say. And so we need to look at management level jobs a little bit differently. So typically we're going to look at three factors. One is the complexity. So which job is more complex, a marketing manager or an HR manager? Now, if I wanted to determine this, let's say, Jody, let's say Chandra. Chandra, I want to figure out which job is more complex, an HR manager or a marketing manager. What might be the first step? Any suggestions?
Look at their roles in the job. Look at their responsibilities.
Sure. Where do I find that information?
And job description.
Sure, good. So that is correct. That's where we begin. We begin with the job analysis. And that's where we, you know, and again, where do we get information from the job analysis? Harry, where do we get our information for the job description or the job analysis? Where does that information come from?
From like the tests,
What tests?
like what the like relative worth and
Oh, before that, way before that in this course, we learned about job analysis, right? We learned about job analysis kind of in like week 4. And that job analysis is where we figure out what are the responsibilities of the job, the duties of the job. Where do we get that information from?
Own it.
Okay, maybe. ONET is one answer. We could get some information from ONET. Any place else? It's very common sense. I'm not asking for something that will surprise you. How do I find out information? If I want to know what duties and responsibilities a teacher has, how do I find out? I could go to ONET. What else could I do?
You could ask.
That's it. That's it. Surveys, questionnaires, interviews, observations. You just ask. That's how you find out. So first of all, if I want to know which job is more complex, an HR manager or a marketing manager, like Chandra said, I start with the job description. And I get that by asking them. And I just figure out, what do these two jobs do? One question is span of control. We learned this if anybody took organizational behavior. What does span of control mean? Anybody?
It's like how much you can influence your employees, like what they do.
Sure. How many employees are you in charge of? Maybe as HR manager, I'm in charge of 3 people. And for marketing manager, She's in charge of 10 people. Okay, that's a much more complex job. The management level. The employer's ability to pay is also quite important. How much profit are we making? What's the rate of return? If the marketing manager makes more money for the company than HR, that's something to look at. Then we also have the actual person. So as HR manager, what's my education? Do I have a PhD? Do I have a master's? What's my experience? Do I have 10 years experience? So we're going to look at these three factors: complexity, ability to pay, and the person, to kind of determine a management level job. Now, what about really top executives, CEOs, vice presidents, presidents, senior managers? What about them, the highest level people? For the highest level people, actually the salary is not the biggest part of their compensation. So top compensation, it does have a salary, of course, and that is your fixed salary every month, your guaranteed bonus, and a discretionary bonus. What's the difference between guaranteed and discretionary? Constance, you there?
Still yes.
What's the difference between a guaranteed bonus and a discretionary bonus?
Guaranteed bonus is something that you're sure to get depending on what was asked to you. And
Sure.
Discretionary will be like a commission on the sale, for example, that not everybody will have.
Sure. So it could be a commission, thank you, or it could be just something if you meet your KPI. Top executives also have KPIs. So if you meet your KPI, please remind me, Chloe, what is a KPI?
Is it like the same as KSA?
No. They are different. What is it, Jonathan? What's the KPI?
Key performance indicator.
Good. Your key performance indicator, right? This indicates if you did a good job. This is your benchmark. So if you're the CEO, you still have a benchmark. And if you achieve that, maybe you get a bonus. There might also be short-term incentives. This could be cash, it could be stock, and this would be for short-term goals. There might also be deferred long-term incentive, such as stock options. Now, I think I want to talk about that in the next subject, but it's not a bad idea to make sure we understand stock options right now since it's coming up. Anybody understand what is stock options?
If a stock hits a certain worth, then you can cash out, basically.
Okay, so let's be clear between the difference between getting stock and getting stock options, because they're different things. So if you join my company, I might give you stock. Now, a lot of companies do this. Think of Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, all of these companies that didn't have a lot of money at the beginning. They gave stock. However, the stock must vest. So what does that mean for the stock to vest? Well, let's say that I want to hire Jody. Okay, and Jody's a very good programmer. You know, my English company, I want to go online. I want to do teaching online. And so I hired Jody, but we're just starting. We don't have a lot of money. Now, I want to give Jody stock instead of a good salary. And Jody says, okay, but I'm afraid that if I give Jody stock today, he will quit in 1 month and now he owns stock. That scares me, right? That stock might be very valuable in the future. So here's what I'll do. I'll say, Jody, I'm going to give you 1,000 shares of stock, but you do not get them until you've worked for me for 2 years. That is called vesting. Think of the word invest.
So like you have a requirement before you get the stocks, right?
Yes, a time requirement. Now, what a lot of companies do is they say, well, I'll give you stock If you work for my company for 6 months, you get 10% of that stock. You work for another year, you get 30% of the stock. You work for 18 months, you get 60% of the stock. They'll do it in time periods. And every 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever, you get more of the stock. But you earn it by putting in time. And this is what most companies do with giving stock, because you don't want to give anybody, be very careful of this. A lot of people in China that I know have made mistakes by opening a company and selling stock, giving stock rather to their employees without letting it vest, which means you get some employees, you give them stock, they could walk away. And now they own your stock. You want to make sure it vests, that you have like, I'll give you all this stock in my company, but you have to work for 1 year first, and then you own it. Right now, you own the right to get the stock. That's stock. Stock option is different. Let's say that I have a company, and right now, my stock is worth $5. Okay, it's $5 per share of stock. And I want to hire Chloe. Now, Chloe, my company has money, but we don't want to give you a very high salary, but we want you to come in as our president of China operations. We don't have that much money, so we can't give you like a very, very high salary, but we're going to give you $4 stock options. Now, Chloe, I'm not giving you any stock today. No stock yet. There's no vesting. There's no stock. I'm giving you an option. Here's your option. You can buy 10,000 shares of stock at $4. Now, today, that price, the price of the shares is $5. So if you wanted, you could take the option and today immediately go and buy 10,000 shares for $4 and then turn around and sell them for $5. You could. So if you wanted the money today, you could get $10,000. However, if you believe in my company, will you do that? Why not?
Because the company for now is small, but if it gets bigger and gain popularity, you probably get higher prices. So I could sell them to higher price and get more benefit at the end.
Absolutely. So I might give you 3 years or 5 years stock options at 10,000 shares for $4. Now, let's say you work really hard as the manager of operations in China and the company grows. And now after 3 or 4 years, our stock is worth $10. You have the option at any time to buy shares at $4 and immediately sell them for the market price of 10. You know, so the more that you believe in the company, the more potential profit you could make. You could wait until the shares are at $100 each, and now you've made a huge profit. But I'm not giving you shares. I'm giving you an option that you can exercise, you can do at any point in, however many years I give you. A lot of CEOs are given options. It's a really cost-effective way to give a benefit because you don't give them anything today. You don't have to give any shares today. All you're giving them is an incentive to work hard and make the price go up, right? Of course, the only danger of this is now there's a danger that Chloe could try to artificially make the price go up, right? There are tricks you can play. But we don't need to get into that. But, that's the risk. Assad, does anybody have a question on stock versus stock options?
You mean like buying stock back? That's what all companies do, right?
Yes, that would, well, not all companies, but yes, that would
But
be,
quick and easy way to make money.
yes. So that would be a way to drive the price up. And then when the price goes really high, Chloe sells, and then of course the price collapses.
Don't pay your workers any money, but buy your stock back.
I mean, welcome to 2020.
That's literally what happened just a couple of months ago.
Right. What happened in 2008 also.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So anyway, stock options can be very beneficial, especially if you're just starting out as a company. Giving stock or giving stock options really generates an incentive without having to give cash. In addition, top executives do get benefits and perks, things like additional life insurance or dental or visual, retirement plans, cars, vacations, use of a company car, all kinds of different perks and benefits that they get. Okay, let's talk now about some specific types of compensation programs. And that'll be the last thing we do today. But there's a bunch of different types of programs to talk about. So to be successful, we know that a good compensation program has to do some key things. One, it needs to align the employee's work with the business goal, right? We always want to align this idea of strategic HR, that if we want an entrepreneurial school, we should have a compensation program that rewards teachers for being entrepreneurs. If we want an academic school, we should have a compensation program that rewards teachers for being academic. If we want, a business school, we should have a compensation program that rewards teachers for doing business. Whatever we want to achieve in our business, we should have a compensation plan that is aligned with that. Also, a compensation program needs to be flexible. It needs to motivate. It needs to help the employees grow and develop. It needs to not be too complicated. It needs to be supported by the CEOs. These are all the things we saw before about a good compensation program. Now, we started by talking about what makes a good compensation program, then the 4 factors that affect compensation programs: legal, union, policy, and legal, union, policy, and what was the other one? Equity. Legal, union, policy, and equity. Then we looked at all of that stuff about relative worth and how we make the compensable factors and how we get a point system. Once we have the point system, we can use that to make pay grades. We can make the pay grades into a line, which we call the wage curve. Then we can take that and make rate ranges. Now we want to talk about and then we talked about executives and some ideas like stocks. Now we want to talk a little about methods of payment. So we start with the idea of base pay. Base pay is the money you get every month. That's base pay. It is fixed. It doesn't change. It's a fixed rate that you get most people get every month. Some people get it every 2 weeks, but that's your base pay. Do you think, Jody, that people should get paid more if they do a better job?
Sure. What do you mean by like better job? By what?
So that if they have a better customer service rating.
Yes, like based on the survey, like, sure.
Jonathan, you agree? People should get paid more if they do better? They're more effective, more efficient, more productive, more, bring customers more satisfaction?
Yes.
Are there any problems with using this system?
Of course.
Such as?
Sacrificing long-term success for short-term success, not being sustainable.
Okay, so if people work hard to get short-term benefits. But I mean, if the customers are happy, then that seems like that would be good long-term, right? Most people generally in studies do agree that people should be paid on merit. What would be the opposite of this? Anybody know? Well, let me give an example. Chloe, you've been a salesperson at my school for 10 years. And you know everything about the business. You've been with me right from the beginning. And recently I hired a new worker, Christine. Christine, I hired her to do advertising. She just finished her master's in advertising. She has no experience. She just joined. And she's very productive. She's very efficient. The customers really like her. Chloe, is it fair that Christine should get a lot more money than you?
Nope.
Why? What if, well, let's say, let me change this. You know, she was hired to work in marketing. You're a salesperson. Let's say I also hired Rodrigo to be a salesperson. And Rodrigo, Chloe, he's doing better than you. He's selling more. He's more productive and the customers like him more. And sometimes these days they say, hey, can I work with Rodrigo? And I say, no, you got to work with Chloe. And they're like, oh, darn. So, but Chloe, you've been with me for 10 years, right from the beginning. Back when it was just, you know, the two of us in a little office. Should you get paid more or should Rodrigo get paid more?
I think that the base pay should be the same, but the extra money, like the other compensation, should be different.
Should you get more, even though he has a higher merit?
No.
Maybe we should be paid more with the loyalty fee, like, you know.
Well, what do you think? I mean, is loyalty worth money? Is it valuable?
But it's not possible to have this kind of environment in a company. It would cause way too many issues.
So it's funny you say that because most companies have this system. And the system is called seniority. Seniority is what most companies use. Yeah. Seniority means how long have you been in the company? That absolutely does matter. It's not the only thing that matters, but it absolutely does. Why do I want someone to stay with my company for 10 years? Because you know so much about the company. You're really a big part of it. Even if Rodrigo just joined and he's doing better in terms of the customer satisfaction or whatever, you can't really put a price on loyalty. You know, there really is so much value in having somebody stay with your company that a lot of companies do not use merit-based payment. Merit-based payment is actually a pretty new idea. Traditionally, now you think of traditionally, think of China. In a Chinese company, and I've worked in Chinese companies, you become a manager by staying with the company for 10 to 15 years. You keep your head down, you do your job, you stay with the company, you will become manager. Do you need to be the best? No. You keep your head down, you show loyalty, you stay with the company, you will become a manager. Is that a good system, Constance?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good. Lots of companies use that system. Are there any problems with that system? Anais, what's a problem with that?
For that?
Oh, sorry, Constance, what were you saying?
Depends who are in charge of judging who merits what.
Okay, sure. So the decisions people make might be a little arbitrary, but there's no decision making. If you've been with the company for 10 years, you become manager. Anais, what's the problem with that?
Maybe they're not the right person. Like seniority doesn't mean that you're necessarily good for the job.
Right. So this is the issue. You might work at the company for 15 years, and yet somebody who's been there 2 years is actually much more suitable for the job. They would make more money as a manager for the company. They would do better. But that's a very new idea, because it is very dangerous to society to not pay people based on how long they've been there. It really shakes things up. It really puts people in a very uncomfortable position to say that loyalty is not the most important thing. So because of this, sometimes with merit-based pay, what we'll do is we'll have a wide range so that somebody could make more money because of their merit, even if they're in the same range. So that if Chloe has been with me for 10 years, she's in range 4. And recently I hired Rodrigo, and he's only in range 2. But each range is so wide that range 2 could have a higher base payment than range 4. Or I could use non-monetary ways to give Rodrigo support. I could give him recognition. I could give him a certificate. I could give him a gift certificate. There are things that I could give Rodrigo that are not money, so that Chloe is still making more. Because actually, it's very important that the people who work for you for a long time do get rewarded. But I also don't want to lose Rodrigo because he's doing really well. So typically, I'm going to look at 3 factors. One is the frequency of merit review. It takes longer to evaluate a vice president than it does to evaluate a warehouse worker. So people who have a higher pay grade are reviewed less often. Now, let's say that I review, Anais is the senior manager of advertising, and she gets reviewed once a year. Chloe and Rodrigo are salespeople. They get reviewed every 2 months. Well, if we review Chloe and Rodrigo every 2 months, the increase they get might be smaller. They might get more increases, but the amount will be smaller. Where Anais is only getting reviewed once a year. And so her amount of increase might be larger because it happens less often. As I said, we want to make sure that we do consider the length of time on the job. And typically, merit is given to a lot of people. Merit might be given to up to 80 to 90% of employees. It's just they get different rewards. This is the idea of having a really developed compensation plan. Whether or not we give someone these merit-based awards is not only how often do we evaluate them, but also things like changes in the market, the economy, our budget, competing companies. If many companies, their salaries go up, we have to deal with that. Our ability to attract and retain employees, goals of the organization and the cost of living index. All of these things might determine payment, even if you haven't been at the company for a very long time. If prices in the market go up, we might need to give more merit-based pay. It doesn't mean we're going to raise your base salary. It just means we're going to give additional benefits or bonuses. So what a lot of companies do is they will start everybody at what's called a single rate. So a single rate is where everybody starts at the same amount of money. And what's good about this is it's very fair. Now, of course, it's different for different jobs. In our company, somebody who's a salesperson is not going to start at the same level as someone who's a manager. But all salespeople will start at the exact same dollar amount. Now, the benefit of the single rate pay is that it's very fair. Everybody gets a starting rate while they learn. And then your pay increases by steps as your performance increases. You have these benchmarks, these job standards. Now, this is going to be used, for example, in a factory. So in a factory, everybody who gets hired starts at minimum wage, let's say $12 an hour. And if you meet a benchmark, like you learn this new machine, that's a standard, or you learn how to do this new process, or you are able to do more than 30 pieces or units per day, or you come on time for 1 month, you're never late. Whatever these standards are, your salary will go up 1 step. Your base salary will just keep going up and up. Now, there are some problems with this. One problem is the steps don't go up forever. If you start at $12 and you work in a factory, or let's say we're doing this for teachers, you all start at 100 RMB per hour. That's it. You know, and then if you learn the next skill, you go to 120. You learn the next skill, you go to 140. You never come late for a whole month, you go to 160. But you never go above 200. So that's one problem, is with these steps, there's a ceiling with the steps. Another problem is with these steps, everybody starts at the same rate. So Chloe starts at 100, Constance starts at 100, Jody starts at 100. What if Jody has a great attitude and he just is so much fun to work with, but Constance is in a bad mood? Doesn't matter, because they start at the same rate and their steps are based on what they learned. So that can be a problem in a lot of businesses. This single rate pay is much more effective at, for example, McDonald's. If you're making French fries at McDonald's, does it matter if you have a great fun attitude or if you're in kind of a bad mood? No, doesn't matter. And then you learn how to handle the cleaning schedule. So you can now be in charge of that. Okay, your base pay goes up. Does it matter if you're happy? Does it matter if you're in a good mood? Not really. I mean, it's nicer to be happy, but it's all about learning the skills. So this does not account for individual performance. And so it should not be used in jobs where your output really depends on your skill level. Like, do customers like you? Are you good at communication? Are you good at problem solving? That would not be suitable for a single rate of pay. This is good where all the jobs have a similar difficulty. If you're making French fries or making a hamburger or making whatever, it's all the same kind of level of difficulty. Everybody's working at pretty much the same speed. You have very clear goals, very clear pre-established goals. The routines are very specific. And the schedules are really, really structured. So your individual effort doesn't really affect. You know, if you try so hard to make French fries, it doesn't actually affect how many French fries you make. You make what we need following the schedule. It doesn't matter if you want to make more. You know, so single rates of pay are typically used in factories. What we use in most other companies is called a variable rate. And that's where it changes. A variable rate of pay says that your salary will change with measurable accomplishments. So with variable pay, this is almost like gambling with your money. Now, most companies don't do this with a lot. They do it with about 5% of the payment, but it says that you have a KPI. So let's say that, Chloe, you work at my English teaching company. You are a salesperson selling classes. Now, because this is not a factory, your abilities and skills and qualities really affect your job. So here's your KPI. I want you to get 10 new customers this month. If you get that, you get a bonus of 5,000 RMB. And if you don't get that, you just get your base pay. You're risking this money. Your base pay is a little bit less than maybe what it could be. But it's not 5,000 RMB more. You know, that's a big bonus for this month. You could get that bonus every month. You could get a 5,000 bonus every single month. But if you don't get 10 people, that's it. You get 9, nope. Like, and you agree to that, that's your KPI. You're taking a risk because based on your measurable accomplishments, your salary will be higher or lower. You would never see this in McDonald's. You would never see something like this in a factory. Well, you know, you would never say in McDonald's, if you make enough French fries, you'll get a bonus this month. It doesn't work like that. You have your salary, and when you learn new skills, your salary goes up. You learn the cleaning schedule, it goes up. You learn to use a different machine, it goes up. You learn to handle ordering, it goes up. And it goes up and there's a ceiling. Now, when you get to that ceiling, what happens? You move into a new pay grade and you enter management training. And once you're in management training, because in McDonald's or KFC or a factory, once you've learned all of the machines and you've learned all of the processes, how do you order the food? How do you manage the people? How do you handle breakfast? How do you just all of these different processes? Now you've achieved basic manager training level. And at that point, you probably have some variable pay goals. So as I said, the employees usually are not going to do more than 5% of their salary. Executives, however, might risk up to 35% or more. So that means as an executive, if Constance is our senior vice president, if she meets her KPIs this month, she might get a bonus of 20,000 RMB. And if she doesn't, her base salary is really not that high. Right? So with executives, this is another thing we do so that we don't have to give them maybe too much cash. You know, these are ideas that are used more in the modern world because in the past, executive salary was just a very high, big number, and it still is in a lot of companies. But when you're opening up smaller companies, you really want it to be aligned with strategy. So if you guys are working for a small company in China, you don't have the money to give an executive, 100,000 RMB a month. But if they meet a KPI and they achieve something really big, well, that could easily be worth that this month. If Chloe is, can get some gigantic, she gets IBM to hire us. And now we have this huge multi-million-dollar contract with IBM. Then it's absolutely worth it to give Chloe a huge bonus. Just how much value does it bring to the organization? There are problems with this too, of course. Disadvantages is that sometimes if you have awards that are based in a team achievement, like let's say that Chloe worked with Constance and Jody and Harry to get IBM. Harry was in charge of the advertisement, and then Jody developed the PPT, but then Constance actually, got the people to come. She's working in HR. She got IBM to come, but then Chloe was the salesperson. And Chloe made the sale. Well, I mean, that's a real problem because now Chloe gets this variable benefit. But what about Jody and Constance and all the other people? We don't really work alone. So there are problems with the idea that in the modern world we use teams and variable pay usually just rewards individuals. But there are also a lot of advantages, right? And the big advantage, look at the economic slowdowns that we have these days. Without firing workers, you can give them their base salary without that variable amount. If you didn't get 10 new customers this month, okay, you still get your base salary. It's enough to live. You didn't get that extra variable bonus. And that can be really good for the business to make sure we don't have to fire people, something that's quite important these days. Okay, there's a little bit left to do, but I see that we're at time. So I'll stop us there for today. There's only a little left to do in this topic, and then we'll move on. So next time, I'll put up the videos, and I'll put up a review video for this one also. Next time, we'll finish compensation. We'll do incentives and benefits. And then once we're done with that, we'll go into fairness. I think that's it for this week. You know what the presentation is for next week. There's no other homework, although I would say it's time to start thinking about the final exam. So it's time to start, because this is an open book exam, it's time to start organizing your open book. And I think we'll take a little time and talk about that, just maybe like 5-10 minutes next week, because you really need to know what you're going to bring to the exam and start developing that package of information. Are you bringing my PPTs? Are you bringing the textbook? Are you bringing your own notes? Do you have, some sort of like, pieces of paper that you put on tabs? How are you ready to answer a question? So start getting that together now. Start, printing things out or getting it planned. And then in the next class or two, I'm going to start giving you guys practice questions so that you'll see, in the limit of 2.5 hours, that you don't have time to just flip through PPTs. You really need to know if it's compensation, I go to this tab and I just open the compensation section and I already have it, highlighted or something. That's important. Okay, any other questions?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Have you done correcting the midterms or not yet?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I've never in my whole life been this late with grading. I've been teaching for 10 years, but I'm getting a master's right now. And my teachers are making me, oh wait, I'll stop recording.